single person in this locker room is a competitor at the highest level. So, yeah, when you feel as if your back's against the wall, you never have to feel like you got to do it by yourself.
Unbelievable throw. Under pressure. Sacked by Quentin Williams. Right sideline, Usama's got it.
You look to your left and your right, you got guys out there with you that our whole point is to help each other.
This one to Mims. That's Corey Davis climbing the ladder.
To be able to go out and lead these guys, just to know how hard these guys work and how important it is to them, and then you get that chance to lead them. Everything that happened that needed to happen for us, it almost felt like kind of like a sign, like get like a second chance almost.
Gets extra pushes, running left.
Maybe a little extra life breathing in the locker.
Touchdown Jets.
All right, boys and girls, the New York Jets season comes to an end. The Jets lose 11-6 to the Miami Dolphins. We'll recap the game real quick, and then I'll get into some of your comments, questions. I want to ask the main question: what are the major questions for the team heading into 2023? And how do you address the coaching positions, the quarterback, the offensive line, all the issues ailing the New York Jets as we see it right now? So today, not a good day. Really boring game. Pretty much from the minute they decided they were going to start Joe Flacco at quarterback, I decided I'm not going to take this overly seriously. I'm going to just sit back, not get stressed. It's not worth my blood pressure to go over the top. And I think watching this game just was the epitome of the New York Jets for this season, and it was just, you can't get anything going. Our offensive production, Zonovan Knight had 12 carries, 22 yards, 1.8 yards per touch. Ty Johnson led the way in terms of average per rush, 5 carries, 12 yards, 2.4 yards per average. You're not going to win with rushing yards like that, and it starts up front with the offensive line, and you're talking Herbig's out, Fant's out, Brown's out. Like across the board, the offensive line looked overmatched. I thought Laken Tomlinson looked overmatched the entire game. I mean, he has been such an awful addition to the offensive line. Like, I was so sure this was like a lock to be like the guy that could be plugged in at guard, and we wouldn't have to worry about it. And it has just been spectacularly the other direction. If it were not for his contract, I would be saying we'd be moving on from him after this year. But I do think he's here for next season. Offensive line's rough. You're not going to win many games like that. Garrett Wilson showed out. I mean, they clearly tried to make him look good in an otherwise lost game. It's really the only thing I think the Jets could have done today that was worth a damn. He had 9 receptions, 89 yards. He led the way for our receivers. After that, everyone else had like nothing. Corey Davis, 1 reception, 17 yards. Tyler Conklin, 2 receptions, 13 yards. Ty Johnson, 2 receptions, 13 yards. Elijah Moore, 1 reception, 11 yards. Like, those offensive production numbers are pitiful. Joe Flacco finishes the day 18 of 33. So what is that, like 55% completion percentage off the top of my head? I don't exactly know. No touchdowns, no interceptions, 153 yards. Really, really lackluster day from him. And you know, it's just nice to get into the offseason, I think, at this point. My main thing was I just don't want to see any injury. And when Sauce went down, I was like, oh no, this is not how this is going to end. I'm not ending this season with Sauce on a torn ACL, and now he's out the entire season. I was like, this cannot happen this way. So I'm just happy we got out of the game. I thought there was plenty of positives you could take away from this game. In a game that did not mean anything, look for players that are going to be here long-term. Guys like Jermaine Johnson, I thought played well. I thought he had himself a really nice day today. Michael Carter, for the most part, early on in this game, played relatively well. I thought Clemens had himself a few nice plays as well. You know, there's players on this team that stayed fighting the remainder of the season, and I think that lets me, like, I lean more on those guys. It's like, okay, these guys didn't give up. They fought the entire way. And, you know, maybe you lost a little bit of that on the offensive line. I mean, some of that I think is probably being outmatched, but I was really happy with what we got out of a lot of the young guys. We got our first catch from hometown favorite Jeremy Ruckert as well. So right now, as it stays, as it all shakes out right now, I think the Jets are locked into the 13 pick. I don't think there's any way we can slide any other direction. So yeah, Jets are picking 13th. Fun. I don't know what happens. Oh man, Washington or Houston's got to be pissed. Houston's picking second now after leading the way all season. Ugh. it is nice not to have to talk about the draft for too long until really last week. So interesting all the way around. I want to hear from you guys though. So let's open the floor up to some discussion. And let's get that ugly score out of the way. Let's not even talk about that. V-Man says, bring in Frank Reich. This offense, this O-line needs an overhaul. Plus side, we finally went a game without giving up a sack. Nice to see Ruckert get a catch. Yeah, I thought so too. And guys, if you didn't see, in the live chat, I have a poll question for us to answer. Will there be any coaching changes? And I have 4 answers in there. There's yes, new head coach and staff. Yes, new offensive coordinator. Yes, new quarterback coach. Yes, additional coach. And by yes, additional coach, the way I mean that is like if we were to bring in an additional position where we didn't fire someone. It was just like, hey, we're bringing in this guy to help us with the issues that we have, not replace a guy that we think we may have issues with. Right now, new offensive coordinator is leading the way with 54%, and I do think Mike LaFleur is the most likely person to have to fall on a sword. I think it should personally be Rob Calabrese, and I think they should look to bring in Nathaniel Hackett, who worked under his brother Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. Sometimes guys that don't work out as head coaches were very good positional coaches, and I would roll the dice on that maybe being the case. With a guy that knows the offense, Frank Reich, if we go new offensive coordinator, I would love that. If there's some way the Dolphins the Dolphins aren't going to move on from McDaniel. He just got them to the playoffs. So regardless of how this season turned out, that wasn't going to happen. Yeah, I don't know. New OC, it's probably Frank Reich is probably the one that I think a lot of people are going to lean on. And yeah, as far as offensive line goes, I'm looking for best tackle in the first round. I'm looking best center in the second round. I'll take best guard in the third round. Like I don't mind spending all our early offensive or all our early assets on that side of the ball because it's so much more important than like my issues with the defensive side of the ball. My issues with the defensive side of the ball, it's safety, it's linebacker. You know, you need to add another defensive tackle at some point. Like there are going to be opportunities. I'm not saying, pass on another area of need for the offensive lineman, but there's like I'm going to be leaning heavier on the offensive line side of things because we need it to work out and because we've been just decimated by depth. I mean, by depth. You're talking Mekhi Becton. You're not going to rely on him going into next year. You have Laken Tomlinson, who you can't rely on from a quality of play standpoint, but he's going to be here for next year. So you at least have to draft his replacement to hopefully beat him next year, if not be ready to take over when you cut him after next year. McGovern, do you try to retain him? Is he going to be one of the better centers on the market? Does he wind up getting overpaid because of it? You might have to make a decision there. I would try to retain McGovern, I think. You get AVT back, and then right tackle, you have a fight between Mitchell. I would bring in McGinchey from San Francisco, maybe try him out on that side of things. Let him and Mitchell duke it out. And then you have Brown, Becton on the left-hand side, but I would still bring in tackle. Best tackle in draft. I would bring in best guard, best center. Like you're going to need those 3 positions. And if you could just fire them all off and you hit on 2 of the 3 and then you work in some other guys, I think you might be headed in the right direction. But I agree with you, V-Man. I think we're looking up. Nice to see the Ruckert catch. But we need a little bit of a shakeup for sure. Let's see. We got Matt Zizelman. Matt says, Can you please do a mock offseason, please? Ooh, yes, I will. I will sit down and I will make an official mock offseason for right now, like how Ryan's feeling in the moment right now without doing too much crazy research. I just have to look up like free agents, contracts, things that I would like to see maneuvered and how we can play with some numbers and whatnot. But I'll definitely do that. I like doing the offseasons. And what I'm going to do, and for you guys that want to kind of hang out and watch what happens along the way, I'm going to do mock off seasons for each scenario as far as new quarterbacks go. So it might be like, hey, maybe I don't necessarily want Baker Mayfield as quarterback, but maybe it's like, hey, Baker Mayfield, what sort of, off season could you build around? Derek Carr, what do you build around? Jimmy Garoppolo, what do you build around? Aaron Rodgers, how could that off season look? What are our top options for quarterback? In my mind right now, I was telling Green Bean at halftime, I think there's a direction and a timeline that the Jets can follow that sort of lays out the roadmap for how you solve the quarterback situation, and you have it in steps. And for me, I'll make a standalone video on this where I have a little more graphics and things that go up. But basically, my thought process on this is Derek Carr has to be released by February 15th. That means a month ahead of time where he's going to go. You go after Carr first. Carr doesn't come in, maybe you work on some sort of backup money for Mike White, whatever. Free agency starts March 15th or March 13th or whatever the tampering period begins. Now you go after Jimmy Garoppolo because he becomes a free agent. Okay, now that those two guys are free agents, if they go elsewhere, now what do you do? Now I think you try to definitely bring back Mike White. You try not to pay him a crazy ton of money, but then I think you go into the draft, and then I would look for someone still in that third, fourth round, somewhere in that ballpark. The kid from Stanford, Tanner McKee, is someone that I want to kind of keep my eye on. I think he might be available somewhere in that mid-range of pick. He's like a 6'6" guy that can kind of run. Definitely rough edges, like not a polished prospect, but I think that's the type of talent set that you would like to sit on the bench and then have like a Derek Carr or someone, compete, and then you see what you do. Who knows? Overall, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of happy with the loss because it does help our draft position, and by and large, that's the only thing that was really going to come positive out of today, especially the way this game ended too, right? Like, you're sitting here, you're watching it, and you're like, okay, no one's really outperforming. It's a really ugly game from both teams. Like, if you're looking at Miami going into the playoffs, are you really thinking they're going to make some noise, especially if they don't have Tua back? I mean, that was weak. I was almost hoping for like a tie because I think a tie would have sent the Steelers to the playoffs and would have knocked Miami and New England out. That would have been really funny to see. Nicholas Joseph says, D didn't allow a touchdown. No, they did not. That was just an ugly game. just an ugly game. Up for debate says, if it was up to me, we need at least a new offense coordinator. Bring back Mike Westhoff as our special teams guy. Stinks. I don't know what to make of special teams because I do like Boyer. I would get rid of the punter before I got rid of Boyer, I think. But if you wanted to pull the plug on him, I understand that as well. I'm not gonna gripe with that. How about Dem Jets says, sign top free agents, then draft best available players. Wow, that's a mock offseason for you. That's an accurate depiction of what every Jet fan wants to happen. Sign good free agents, draft best available players. Now, see, free agents, you have to look at their wants, their needs. Is it purely money? Is there coaches that they desire to play with? Are there players they desire to play with? Are there extenuating circumstances, family near them? I think all that plays into the free agency discussion. And the Jets, unfortunately, don't have a great spot because of the taxes and because of, maybe the media and things like that. I do think that wears on us a little bit. Mindy says, Ryan, I get the importance of continuity, but this collapse is unacceptable and a poor reflection on Sal and his coaches. I completely agree. I also think when you lose your two-star players in Brees and AVT, I think you clearly saw the team try to fight, and at the point when you lost those two players, we needed to rely on Zach. That's why Zach had 355 yards against the Patriots the first time, and then we lost the game because of his 3 turnovers. The next game against the Bills, luckily we had the 2 turnovers. They had the missed field goal that gave us the opportunity to have those extra offensive possessions to beat the Bills by 3 points. And I think you saw us rely on Zach Wilson after those guys went down, and we just could not do it, and the team recognized what was happening. And then you turn to Mike White, and Mike White looked like he might be an option because we saw that was the only thing that was really, the issue, I think. I know obviously the offensive line's a problem, but I think you look at the quarterback as the easy, not the easy swap out, but you swap out that one piece, and it seems like everything's going to click a little bit better when you have to rely on him. But now you get Brees Hall back, you get AVT back. I think keeping the continuity, but maybe switching up the offensive coordinator or adding, like what I would like to do, what I'd like to see is like an assistant head coach. I want to see, hey, Frank Reich, you're going to come in, be the assistant head coach for the New York Jets. You're going to be on the offensive side of the ball. Robert Saleh is going to control the defensive side of the ball with Ulbrich, and it's going to be perfect harmony. These guys are going to work together. Maybe. Or you bring in someone else. I don't know who that other person would be. Nathaniel Hackett's kind of the one that I've spitballed a little bit. Let's see. Yoshi goes, public flogging for LaFleur. Man, people are not happy with LaFleur. I get it. G says Lawson will get restructured or cut. Yeah, I think he's probably cut. I think I would like, as much as I like Carl Lawson, I don't know if there's enough money for me to feel like I need to continue on with him. I like what we got out of Huff. Jermaine Johnson and Carl and Michael Clemens. And I think if you're going to have John Franklin Myers here and you want to continue him on the outside, then I think you have 4 capable guys on the edge, and then you just need to draft someone in the draft or bring someone in as a defensive tackle. But yeah, I do think he's probably out of here. Miguel goes, we need to save Salah from Salah, replace LaFleur. He has no clue. Yeah, I wonder if Douglas would overstep Salah to fire LaFleur. I don't think that like goes for a healthy relationship. Like, I don't think Woody should demand it. I think it's a decision that should be made by Salah. And if he's not going to fire him, then it should be mandated that they bring in someone additional in conjunction with LaFleur. I don't think you roll the dice on LaFleur and Calabrese. I think Calabrese is definitely gone. I think LaFleur may have to be gone. G goes, all of our free agent signings are pretty awful this year besides DJ Reed. Can't trust Joe Douglas with free agents. That's why he doesn't go after the big free agents. Although Laken Tomlinson, I think all of us can get on board saying we were 100% on board with that signing at the time because he was coming from a very, very similar system, the exact system, on a Pro Bowl caliber season. Like, the whole Laken Tomlinson thing, I'm not going to blame that on Joe Douglas. I have no idea where this really came from. As far as the other free agents, Whitehead, I think, has been a flop. Who do you bring in instead of him at that point? I like him. He just doesn't wrap up. I like Quincy Williams. Not that was a free agent, but, undrafted or waiver wire kind of guy. I like Uzama and Conklin. I don't think they were bad pickups. I just don't think we utilized them the best way because of our quarterback. Like, I think we wasted a bunch of money on players that were not getting the ball because of our quarterback situation. So I don't know. I get why people would be salty on JD's free agents, but I'm not quite on the same level just because the Laken Tomlinson one's a weird one. That one shouldn't have flopped the way it did. Robert says, Sean Payton, give him a blank check to come here. I don't think he's going to come here. And I don't know what you'd have to give up. Would you give up the number 13 overall pick to get Sean Payton? I would do that. I don't think I would fire Salah for anyone less than Sean Payton. And I don't really want to fire Douglas either. That would kind of irk me. If we have to fire Douglas to get Sean Payton, I don't know. I'd have to see how Payton is as a GM and his draft status and whatnot and acquisitions, because I like Douglas a lot. I really do. Kyle says, losing 6 in a row down the stretch and not scoring a touchdown in 4 straight is all on the coaches. Yeah, I don't care who your quarterback is. You have to get into the end zone. I think it's ugly. I don't like the rotating door, and I don't think Salah's the issue. I really don't. I think maybe a loss of confidence in the quarterback is more my concern than anything else. Mark Anthony says, how about quarterback Clayton Tune in later rounds of the draft? Throws almost 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns last 2 seasons out of University of Houston. I'd have to look at him. I'm cool with any later round quarterback. I would say 3rd round and later. Tanner McKee's the one that seems interesting to me just because of his his upside potential. And I don't think if we sign him, whether we bring in any caliber quarterback to start for next year or have Zach Wilson as the de facto guy in a competition with someone else, I don't think he's threatening enough, but provides so much upside that I think he's worth having on the roster as a backup and see where it goes. D. Jones says, Lamar Jackson. I've seen a lot of people talk about Lamar Jackson, but I don't think you have LaFleur here if you bring in Lamar. I don't think he'll utilize his talent correctly. Luke says, do you remember Paul Hackett? Did we not learn about the Hacketts yet? Stay away, I think. Yeah, I know Paul Hackett. He was our offensive coordinator a long time ago. But Nathaniel Hackett as a quarterback coach may not be the worst case scenario. Willie Vision says, Williams signing first order of business 4-year deal. Yeah, you got to get the Quinnen Williams contract done, whether it's a 3-year extension, which makes it a 4-year deal because we did exercise his 5th-year option. I would like to see him get the bag. Yeah, 4 years, $100 million, something like that, $96 million. make the numbers work out. You could have it escalate if you call it 4 years, $100 million, but it's like, maybe it's 22, 24, 26, 28. I don't know if that math works out the right way, but you have it, 4 years where they kind of escalate going up, and it's not quite as bad. But I like Quinnen a lot. I think he has earned himself a nice, hefty contract, and the first Jet to re-sign with the New York Jets that was drafted by us since Muhammad Wilkerson, at least the first-round pick, because we did re-sign Jordan Jenkins for a 1-year deal. James Bernard says, potential cuts for the Jets: Whitehead, Joyner, Tomlinson, Fant, Davis. 2 of our tight ends, don't know who else. No, I would say this. I don't think Whitehead's going to go anywhere. I think we paid him some money. I think it's worth having him around for next year. Joyner's not going to be here. I don't even think he's under contract, so he's not going to be a cut. Tomlinson, his contract is prohibitive, so he's definitely Tomlinson's going to be here. Fant is a free agent, so he's not going to get cut. He's just not going to be here. Davis, I do think, could get cut or be asked to take a lesser contract. I would replace him with a bigger bodied receiver, and someone who may hit the market is Michael Thomas, someone who you're not necessarily relying on, but could have a really high upside as far as a wide receiver goes. Like if we were to have our choice between Corey Davis or Michael Thomas, I'm probably, I don't know. I like Corey Davis. He's been in the system too. I guess it depends on the price. Our 2 tight ends, I would keep both of them. I like Conklin. I like Uzomah. I would not move on from them. Let's see. Mitzate says, can Lamar refuse the franchise tag? Does he have to sit if he does? Yes. So Lamar Jackson can refuse to sign his contract, refuse to sign his franchise tag. If that's the case, he is not under contract and he would have to sit out the entire season. He would not get paid. So Lamar Jackson, as soon as they hand him that franchise tag, should sign that franchise tag. That is a $45 million 1-year contract that they are paying him. They're going to want to lower that number on a multi-year deal. If not, they may want to trade him at that point. It would not shock me if Lamar not playing these last few games was because he believes he could get traded and get the bag this offseason. If that's the case, then I think he plays in the playoffs and he tries to do what he needs to do in the important games, but these games down the stretch that didn't matter, I think he's preserving his body. I don't particularly like the Lamar Jackson route, but there is a world where you could convince me that if you give up 3 first-round picks and you pay him a ton of money, Joe Douglas can use his draft picks, not in the first round, so his 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round picks, his 6 other draft picks, even though this year, you'd only have 4 other draft picks. But you have other draft picks, trades, free agency, undrafted free agency that you could bring other players in and bring guys in on cheaper contracts. We've seen it with Bryce Huff. We've seen it with JFM. We've seen it with Quincy Williams, Braxton Berrios. The cheap guys that he's bringing in the tail end of the draft, guys like Michael Clemens, he's finding talent. So there is a world where you could convince me, hey, you give Lamar a guaranteed 3 or 4 year contract. That's our Super Bowl window while these core players are on their rookie deals. And once Lamar's contract is up, we then retain our young core players, and you have had some sort of young quarterback over the course of these next few years sitting behind Lamar. Like there's a situation where you could sell me on that type of package. My concern with that is, one, look at what happened with Russell Wilson. Look at what happened with Deshaun Watson. Look at what happens with the amount of salary cap space that's devoted to someone like Aaron Rodgers up in Green Bay. Like there's a lot of issues with that, not to mention the running and health play style of Lamar Jackson. And if Douglas has any knowledge within the Ravens organization, I think them passing on paying Lamar this much money is maybe a red flag on why Douglas would want to pay him that much money. That seems, I don't know. I trust Douglas on the Lamar decision, and I don't see it happening. It just doesn't smell like a Douglas move. Daryl Hines says, what do you think about Baker Mayfield over Derek Carr or Jimmy Garoppolo? I would say no. My first option, hands down, Derek Carr. His average would be our best quarterback ever. Like I would take Derek Carr's average. Even his cold weather stats are so overblown. I don't want to hear it. We beat Buffalo, the number one seed. We beat Buffalo with 150 yards and 1 touchdown from Zach Wilson on a perfect weather day when we didn't have Breece Hall and we didn't have AVT. We can win on a cold weather day when we're relying on AVT and relying on Breece Hall, and Derek Carr's stats are better than that. Like, I'm sorry, I'm taking Derek Carr. And Jimmy G knows the offense. I think Jimmy G is our most likely person that winds up here in New York, but I'm hoping for Derek Carr. And Baker, I don't particularly want us involved with Baker at all. And that's someone who wanted Baker like in that draft. I like Baker a lot. Luke says, quarterback scenario. An NFL team signs Mike White as a starting quarterback, so obviously he takes it. Sign a veteran quarterback for cheap, less than $20 million a year. Draft a quarterback late in the draft, rounds 4, 5, or 6. Wilson is still here, and there's a 3-way quarterback competition. That sounds awful, Luke. I'm fine. What veteran are you signing? If you're saying that, a veteran quarterback less than $20 million, you're not getting Carr, you're not getting Garoppolo for less than $20 million. You may not get Minshew for less than $20 million. If you can get Minshew for less than 20, then maybe you consider it. Or maybe there's a situation where Brady's like, I want to come to New York and I'm going to take less than $20 million, and you consider it. But like, I don't like any quarterback that you get for under $20 million because I think that means you're starting Zach Wilson at quarterback, and I think that means you're throwing away a season. So I don't like that at all. That's a no-go from me, boss. Joe S says, JD entering his 5th year and no offensive line, no quarterback, and no head coach. I think we do have a head coach. I think Saleh is our head coach. I think players want to play with Saleh. I think we saw that with Tomlinson, with Quan, with Reed. Now, obviously, some of those don't work out, like the Tomlinson thing, but I think most of us would be surprised that would have not worked out like the way it kind of has. So no quarterback? Yeah, no quarterback, that's an issue. No offensive line, it's not because Douglas hasn't tried. And some of this I don't necessarily blame on him. Like, I did think passing on Wirfs was a mistake. You can look back at the draft day when we had that pick. I thought we should have taken Wirfs. Took Becton. I like the athletic upside. Not upset, at all with the decision. He looked like he was going to be the best tackle in the game. Really, if you want to play optimistic Jet fan for a second and you say Becton is our left tackle for next year, and then Tomlinson's going to turn it around. We're going to bring back McGovern. AVT's coming back. We got our right guards like locked into place, and then Mitchell, and we're going to bring in one other guy on the right-hand side, and everyone's just going to click. Like, if Becton clicks, the entire offensive line discussion completely changes. But you just can't rely on him to click. So you have to use these extra assets on the offensive line, and Douglas looks like he has egg on his face. And honestly, he does. He's brought in here to fix the offensive line, and by and large, Clark was a bust. Never played a snap. Khalil was a nice swing at the time. Tomlinson hasn't worked out. You bring in McGovern, who has been a steady center for us. He's been really consistent. I'm happy with that. I like the trade up for AVT, even though some people didn't like giving up 2 third-round picks to get him, but I think he's our best offensive lineman. I do like the Mitchell pick. And Fant, while maybe slightly disappointing, is, he was great for us last year and, halfway decent for us this year. And then you talk about guys like Brown. You bring in Brown just because of everything that happened with Becton, the Becton injury. Becton injury, like, that sucks. That stuff hurts. I like Joe Douglas. I think this team is better than without Joe Douglas. I would be very, very upset if anything happened from that level of the organization. If they pulled I don't think they should pull the plug on Saleh. I don't think they should pull the plug on Douglas. I don't think I would pull the plug on LaFleur, but I'd be okay if they did. AZ Jets says, hope the young guys got some good experience today. Very happy moving up 8 to 10 picks in the draft. Best offensive line player in first round is a must. Let's draft a superstar. Yeah, get the best offensive lineman you can, and hopefully it's a tackle. And then, you know what? Worst case scenario, you have, the new left tackle and Becton on the other side. That would be fantastic. Have Mitchell back up Becton. If Becton leaves at the end of the year, maybe Mitchell's ready to step in at that point, and then you're rocking and rolling. You have Brown come back if he has surgery and he doesn't want to retire. Maybe you have a backup tackle there. There's some hope for the Jets' offensive line. It's just you're hoping. you're hoping for some stuff to go right. Duke doesn't like Derek Carr. Derek Carr is so overrated. You realize if we had like average quarterback play, we had bottom rung quarterback play this year. Our leader in the clubhouse for touchdowns had 6. We haven't had plus 10 touchdowns in a season in 3 seasons. plus 10 touchdowns from a quarterback. That's a joke. That's not an NFL team. Derek Carr is overrated. Sit down, Duke. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Get me fired up. Just trying to enjoy my Sunday. What else you guys talking about in here? Woke Hogan says Darnold is awful. I'm not watching the Panther game right now, if it's on. But I would be lying if I said there wasn't a little bit of me that like kind of hopes that Sam does come back, even though I know there's negative 20% chance that that's going to happen. Ablator says, I would rather Derek Carr than Jimmy Garoppolo, but barely. I don't want either one of them. I don't think either one of them's as special as I think Zach could be, but I think Derek Carr or Jimmy Garoppolo could instantly set single season franchise records for us their first year playing for us. So I would take either one of them, and I would not be upset in the slightest. Let's see. What are you guys talking about here? Stifler's mom. Stifler's mom says, I would sure hate to see Lamar go to Miami. That's what they're going to try and do. If they're going to try and do a bidding war, they're going to try and pit the two of us against each other. The only thing is Miami doesn't have a first-round pick this year. So, like, I don't know how they have any option as far as, like, that team goes, unless they're like, hey, we're just going to trade you Tua, and that makes up for the first-round pick, which it could certainly do. And I would take Tua over Jackson long-term maybe if you are not concerned with the head injuries. But he had 3 brain injuries in, like, a 4-month span. Lamar going to Miami is terrifying. If you had to go against Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson twice a year, that is a scary situation. I don't want to deal with that. I don't think the Jets are the place for Lamar. I don't know where Lamar goes. Like, is it really Miami and the Jets? Are those like the two big options for people? Random Man says, oh, Jets talk 24/7. Let's settle for below average quarterback play. When did I say that? I said if we had below average quarterback play, we'd be a really good team. We have the worst quarterback play. I'm saying Derek Carr is like top 8 to 12. And Jimmy Garoppolo's probably in that 8 to 14 conversation as well. I'm all about above average quarterback play, but if we had below average quarterback play, we'd be a hell of a lot better team. Like, that's how bad our quarterback play has been. Get me fired up. Juan says, I don't think a free agent quarterback is going to come here the way the offense played the last few weeks and the negative New York media. We do need offensive line help. Offensive coordinator is on a short leash next year if we can't score. If you don't land Derek Carr and you don't land Jimmy Garoppolo, I think there is a real case to just switch up the offensive coordinator at that point. Well, which sounds like bananas. Like maybe you have like some point of like, or maybe it's like if you don't get Derek Carr, it's like, hey, we just got to switch it. Because you got to see what you have with the guys inside. And maybe it's cheaper to just pull the plug on the offensive coordinator than it is to reset the clock on the quarterback, to reset the clock on the left guard and Tomlinson. Like there's some money invested into this offense, and you kind of have to maybe switch it up to see if you can get the maximum amount of potential out of it when we feel like we may not have gotten it totally out of some of the players that we've given LaFleur. My issue is that I really do see a lot of guys running open free, and I don't think the offensive coordinator is necessarily the issue. But yeah, Juan, I'm right there with you. I do think the Jets are going to have an issue with attracting quarterbacks. I think Brady goes to Vegas. I think there's a real possibility that Carr goes to Miami or to Indianapolis. Like maybe Carr goes to Indianapolis, Tua stays in Miami, or doesn't. Jimmy G goes to Miami. And then now you're sitting here like, okay, what do we got? Mike White? Who's your other quarterback at that point? Are you like thinking quarterback in the first round then? I think at that point you're probably looking at the after June 1st timeline. And you're talking about either Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love. I think one of Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, Mike White. One of those 5 will be our starting quarterback. First day of 2023. I really don't want it to be Mike White, but I think he probably deserves, he has the highest percentage chance of being back, or at least being on the Jets of all those players, because he's already here. But I do think it's going to be one of those 4 quarterbacks. And I think different things could happen based on how things shake out. And it could be if Jordan Love comes here, maybe it's because we've traded Zach Wilson for Jordan Love and some draft picks. If it's because Aaron Rodgers comes here, it's because they want Jordan Love to start, and we're hoping that Zach Wilson can be the guy beyond 2023, and we have Aaron Rodgers for like a year. I don't know. There's going to be some interesting options for the New York Jets, and I do think one of those that I just mentioned is where it shakes out. Vinny says, is it feasible to maybe land Carr and Devontae Adams for our first and second round picks? I think that's the only way that Derek Carr approves a trade. So Derek Carr has a no trade clause, which means any trade has to go by him and he has to say, I approve that or I decline it. So if he says, I want to play with my best friend Devontae Adams and I want to be a Raider, and you are either going to have to pay me my $30 or $40 million on February 15th, or you're going to have to cut me, they will cut him. If a team approaches Derek Carr and they say, hey, we're trying to make a move for Devontae Adams and you, we're going to give up our first and second round pick because I don't think, we'd be able to pry Devontae Adams away from them anyway, and we don't know if you'd choose us, without him. But we think getting the two of you here, which I think Devontae Adams with Garrett Wilson, with Elijah Moore is really appealing. I think that is awesome. And I would flip Zach Wilson to the Raiders in a heartbeat. I'd give them a first round pick, for the Devontae Adams thing. If there's a guy that thinks he can turn a high school quarterback into an all-pro quarterback or whatever, the way McDaniels does, maybe he could do that with Zach Wilson. That is a very glamorous trade. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Carr decides to opt out of his contract because his contract right now is only $30 million guaranteed. If he opts out of his contract with the Raiders, he's going to get like 3 years, $100 million fully guaranteed. That's the play. If I'm Derek Carr, I'm taking the money. So that's what I would do. Peter Purple says, cut Berrios. He did nothing. Give Moore his job. Yes, I would give Elijah Moore Berrios his job. I would cut Braxton Berrios. I wanted Berrios because he had such a good rapport with Zach Wilson. I think now that you're kind of moving on from Zach Wilson, I think it's a lot easier to cut Braxton Berrios. Not to mention, even some of his kick returning prowess wasn't quite as sharp as it was last year. So even the thing you brought him in, it just felt like we paid him $5 million to waive for fair catches. I do like his judgment. Wouldn't mind him being here, but I think Elijah Moore is the player that should be getting those reps. What else are you guys talking about in here? G says, why are we pretending like Saleh is some brilliant head coach? This team has been undisciplined all year long. We spent how much on the defense? If it wasn't great with any coach, I'd be surprised. I don't think that's a good way to look at it. I think you went from the worst defense in the league to a very respectable defense, one that only let up 9 points today. And if your offense has any sort of movement, they may not give up as much as 9 because maybe the downs and distances and the field position is then changed. So I think our defense is way, 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 way from the problem. And I think we got way more from our linebackers, which could be credit to Saleh because he was a former linebackers coach. And I think Quan, Quincy, and Mosley all played really well this entire season. So while I'm not going to call him brilliant, I very much like Robert Saleh. Matt A says, MetLife turf and Lamar is not a good combo. Yes, I completely agree, but I heard rumors that we're getting new turf next year, and it's going to be a different type of way the blades come out of the rubberized bottom of it. So maybe that changes how things work. Yoshi, does the cap not exist in this scenario? How the hell do you fit a Quinnen extension, Carr, and Adams into our caps? By adding a ton of void years on the back end of that. And you'd have to rework a contract too. You could make enough room. If you're bringing in Devontae Adams, you're cutting Corey Davis. That instantly saves money. Let's see. Let's take a look at what Devontae Adams' contract is. I know it's pretty big, but I don't think it's that big that it would be prohibitive to trade for. Yeah, he got a massive signing bonus. So if you trade for him for next year, his cap hit's only going to be $6 million. And his 2024 salary becomes guaranteed. And if you have to have him on the contract on the field in 2024, it's going to cost you $17 million. It's not until 2025 when his contract costs you $35 million and he's 35 years old that it becomes a problem. You would have him under contract for 2 seasons with Derek Carr, with these guys on rookie contracts. Trading for Derek Carr and Devontae Adams, really not that outrageous if it's like the last ditch effort for this regime to try and win a ring. Might not be the worst move, looking into it. And then the Carr numbers, you don't worry about it. You just don't. Like Quinnen, $22 million. You can find $22 million easy. $22 million. Damn, cut Tomlinson. Yeah, you'll find money. You just push money into further years. That's the nice thing with guys like Quinnen. Quinnen's going to be here a long time, so pushing some money a little bit further down the road isn't the worst case scenario in that type of situation. Damon Allman says, Salah does have horrible clock management. He needs to spend the off-season playing Madden. Yeah, and we even hired a guy to like have situational awareness or whatever. That Smash guy. I think he sits up in the booth with LaFleur. Green Bean did a video on him. Just check that out. Ace Solo says, I don't want Jimmy G. He is injury prone. That is why he's number 2 on my list. Derek Carr has played in 142 of 144 games that he has been available to play. And I think that consistency is so much more valuable to our team because we rely on our running backs and our guys out in space than the injury mystery that could be Jimmy G or Mike White. I do think the most likely situation is that we have Mike White and Jimmy G here next season, or Jimmy G and Zach Wilson. I just hope it's Derek Carr. For all the reasons I've mentioned before. Dominic says, who would you keep of Quincy Williams and Quan if you could only bring back one of them? I'd have to look at how old Quan is. Quincy's pretty young. I think there's probably some upside in having Quincy and Quinnen on the field together. Like, I think there might add a little extra juice, and I think they feed well off one another. And I do think Quincy took a really big step forward this season. I think he was my most improved player on the year for the Jets. But Quan was a breath of fresh air. I really like Quan. I would try to... the way I would come up to CJ Mosley is I would say, hey, CJ, we want you to retire a Jet. We want to drop your cap figure from this massive number that you currently have. We want to bring it down. We're going to give you a little bit more guaranteed money over the course of the rest of your years here. And then we're going to use the money that we're restructuring from you to bring back Quan and to bring back Quincy. We're going to keep the 3 of you guys together for another year. And then you're going to draft some guys to try and replace CJ Mosley, to try and replace Quan Alexander, to potentially have to replace Quincy Williams. But I think you bring back all 3 in some capacity, whether it be on 1 or 2 year deals. And I think you use CJ Mosley's money that you save to try and facilitate that. But I like both of them. It's a good question. Let's see. Sneakers to Boots. What's up, dude? He says, how much do you blame Salah for the handling of Zach? The Mike White t-shirts in Minnesota was just confidence crushing for Zach. Think he might have thought even Salah was in on it. I do blame Salah a little bit for the whole Zach thing, and I think more of that stems from relying on Rob Calabrese to develop Zach as the quarterback coach. I think they relied on Greg Knapp last year. The passing of him in that tragic fashion left them, reeling a little bit last year. And I think you bring in Wilson's quarterback coach halfway through last season. You saw how that helped. And then this year, relying on Calabrese instead of bringing in an experienced quarterback coach was the downfall for me, and I blame that on Salah more than I blame that on LaFleur, but LaFleur has a heavy influence on how Zach should develop as well. But I think we just have a very inexperienced staff across the board. I think a lot of them are in their positions for the first time, and guys that have a little bit more veteran presence, like a John Benton, who has been on the offensive line as a coach for a long time. His unit was able to overcome some of the injuries to a certain extent. I mean, obviously the AVT one was the crusher, but I think up until the bye week, overall, if you had told us the amount of losses of players we had to the offensive line, we would have told you that was a relatively successful campaign to that point in time. So yeah, I think inexperience had a lot to do with it, and I do think Salah is to blame because it's his staff. And I do think the Mike White t-shirts, it's not a great look. But I think their plan when they pulled Zach Wilson, I think they ultimate, as much as they were saying we want to see Zach Wilson back on the field, I think they wanted to bench Zach Wilson the rest of the year to give him the season to kind of reset. And then when Mike White got hurt, that's when the Mike White t-shirts looked like a bad idea. I think the Mike White t-shirts at the time they happened was a way to try and spark the team on what was supposed to hopefully be a playoff push. And I think because of, the injury, it then looks bad and things started to fall apart and, things compound and look a little worse now than I think they were at the time. And is that crushing for Zach a little bit? And, Salah's letting it happen. I think he's allowing the players to show who they want. I think he's going to play the best player. And I think it was clear that I think if you're Salah talking to Zach and you're having a reflective moment, like, hey, look, we're going to support the best guy for the job. Zach, I want you to earn that job. I think you have the most talent in that room. I think you can be the best guy for that job. But right now, Mike White's playing the best quarterback in this room, and that's why he's starting right now. And I think it's hard to have a conversation with the player when they're not playing up to the level they need to hold on to the job in the first place. So I don't know. I do blame Salah a bit for that, but I think it's more on the lack of experience on the coaching side of things than it is on the handling of the locker room. Because I do think he's actually handled it relatively well from like a hold the locker room together standpoint with everything that's kind of gone on this season. Manuel Sola says, where are we in the draft order? We are picking number 13 as of me refreshing this page right now. So yes, Jets are picking 13 as of right now. The mock draft on Tankathon has the New York Jets passing on offensive tackle Broderick Jones out of Georgia and instead taking quarterback Anthony Richardson out of Florida. He's 6'4", 232 pounds. He had 17 touchdowns, 9 interceptions this year, 54% completion percentage, 131 quarterback rating with 2,500 passing yards. This guy is a project. Very exciting quarterback. Could be a beast of a quarterback and fun in the East. But man, I don't think the Jets and Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh are in the business to be in that particular spot for a quarterback. I'd be taking the best offensive lineman. I'd be taking Broderick Jones, and it's not even I wouldn't even second guess it. I think taking the quarterback there is, unless you're willing to give Douglas and Saleh the time to develop that quarterback, then like an additional 2 years. I don't know. I think that's a risky move. I don't think they make that. Curly says the Jets have been in quarterback hell since 1969. Yeah, we've been in purgatory. Just want to get that next best guy. Mark says Jets spent about $7 million this season and have 5 to all season. Why don't they utilize them better? I'm not sure I understand what that question was referring to. Sorry. Jonathan, feeling like a lot of Jet fans. Happy we lost. Whack game reminded me of the preseason. Yeah, it felt like the preseason with the names we saw out there. When Sauce went down, I almost lost my top on where, like, it's like, if we lose Sauce for an entire year and he doesn't play until the middle of next season and he's hampered into the playoffs next year, I'd be so mad. That's why Zach didn't play. I think that a healthy Zach in the offseason is far more important than us winning this game. I think this was the right move. Oreo says, I really hope rookie Garrett Wilson. I really hope Garrett Wilson gets rookie of the year. Dude is passionate and team let him down. Yeah, I think Garrett Wilson is clearly offensive rookie of the year if he has reasonable quarterback play. Like the fact that he's even in the conversation with Kenneth Walker. Like Kenneth Walker probably had the better rookie season, if I'm being totally fair, but I think the better player is Garrett Wilson. Joe S. says Dable got Daniel Jones' face, and look what happened. Yeah. I think Dable put together a better staff, too. I like Kafka as OC. I like Martindale as DC. That was actually the staff I wanted the year we fired Gase. I wanted Dable and I wanted Kafka. Wink, I would have thought would have been a head coach. I didn't think he was going to be a defensive coordinator, so I don't think I had him. I think I had Aaron Glenn or Jim Leonard as my defensive coordinator in my mock offseason. But yeah, I love Dable. I'm a big Dable guy. I mean, look at his pedigree behind Belichick, behind Saban, behind McDermott. Like, just it's just a lot of talent that he's been behind. Knows where to pull staff from, too. Mark Anthony says, Brian Branch, first round safety, moved back into the first for Trenton Simpson. I don't want to draft a safety in the first round. Things would have to go seriously wrong for me to draft a safety in the first round. Charles M. says, how many yards does Garrett Wilson have with average quarterback play? Well, what did he end up finishing with? Let's see. What did Garrett Wilson finish the season with? He finished the season with 1,014 yards. Is that right? Looks right. Interesting. Thought he had more than that. That can't be right. That must not be updated. Unless he went back. Oh, did he go backwards on that last throw? Because it was a fumble? Is that what wound up happening? Right now, Google has him at 1,014, but I thought he had more than that. I thought he was further along. I don't know. Stupid stuff. All right. I have been on here long enough. You guys know my thoughts. I'm going to digest this a little bit. We're going to come back with the call-in show tomorrow. I want to hear your thoughts on the season overall. And I'm going to ask you guys grade-wise. It's going to be, let's see how you would grade each unit for the New York Jets. I'll give you guys my thoughts on the grades tomorrow before I start the call-ins. Then we can talk about call-ins overall. And then maybe I can create some kind of graphic. So as you call in, I can add your grade to each one of the things. Maybe I can make that happen. I don't know. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Our poll question is finished at 524 votes. 54% of you say the Jets should hire a new offensive coordinator. 21% think we should hire a new quarterback coach. 13% said new head coach and staff. 11% say additional coach. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in, hanging out today. My name is Ryan. This is Jets Talk. Signing off. Jets.
I think every single person in this locker room is a competitor at the highest level. So, yeah, when you feel as if your backs are against the wall, you never have to feel like you got to do it by yourself.
Unbelievable throw. Under pressure. Sacked by Quinnen Williams. Right sideline, Usamas got it.
You look to your left and your right, you got guys out there with you that our whole point is to help each other.
This one to Mims. That's Corey Davis climbing the ladder.
To be able to go out and lead these guys, just to know how hard these guys work and how important it is to them, and then you get that chance to lead them. Everything that happened that needed to happen for us, it almost felt like kind of like a sign, like give like a second chance almost.
Gets extra pushes, running left.
Maybe a little extra life breathing in the locker room.
Touchdown, Jets.